Dad didn't invite me to his wedding with his new girlfriend. We celebrate small, he said, his voice flat, devoid of any real apology, like he was discussing a minor inconvenience. I nodded, a polite, practiced smile on my face, a facade I'd perfected over years of his emotional absenteeism. Inside, a familiar ache settled in my chest. Then, a few days later, scrolling through my Facebook feed, I saw it. A cascade of professional wedding photos. My father, Richard Hayes, beaming, arm in arm with Serena Vance, his new wife. And beside them, front and center, were her two children, laughing, posing like a perfectly blended, picture-perfect unit. My new family, he captioned it, the words a hammer blow to my already bruised heart. He hadn't just gotten married, he had replaced me, completely erased me from his narrative. In that searing moment, the old ache transformed. It hardened into a cold, fierce resolve. He thought he could write me out of his life, but he had no idea that his next move would force him to confront the biggest secret about his own carefully constructed world. My name is Chloe Miller. My relationship with my father, Richard Hayes, was always distant, defined by his emotional detachment and my constant feeling of being an afterthought. This neglect culminated in the ultimate betrayal. He deliberately excluded me from his wedding, only to publicly flaunt his new wife's children as his new family on social media. This final act of erasure ignited a cold fury within me. I decided to leverage a critical, long-held secret about his multi-million-dollar luxury car dealership, a vulnerability he believed was hidden, to shatter his newfound happiness and expose the true cost of his emotional neglect. My childhood with my father, Richard Hayes, was a masterclass in emotional distance. He was a man obsessed with appearances and success, a charismatic figure to the outside world, but a ghost within our home. He founded and built a highly successful luxury car dealership, Hayes Auto Group, and poured all his energy into it. He provided for us financially, of course, a grand house, designer clothes, a private school education. But love, warmth, genuine connection? Those were foreign concepts. I was an item on a checklist, a necessary part of his perfect life image, but never a priority. My mother, bless her heart, tried to fill that void, showering me with affection, teaching me empathy and resilience. But Richard's absence was a constant, gnawing ache. When my parents divorced when I was 13, it felt less like a family breaking apart and more like Rick finally checking out of a hotel. He packed his bags with an unsettling detachment, leaving my mother and me standing in the doorway, watching him go. He maintained sporadic contact, mostly through impersonal phone calls and occasional, awkward dinners where his attention was clearly elsewhere. I learned early on not to expect anything from him. Years passed. I built my own life, pursued a degree in forensic accounting, a field where meticulous detail and uncovering hidden truths were paramount. It was a skill I unknowingly honed during my teenage years when, out of curiosity, I had once helped my mother sort through some old family documents related to a piece of land that had been in my grandmother's family for generations. This land, it turned out, was surprisingly adjacent to Richard's booming car dealership, and the old paperwork hinted at a complex, almost forgotten legal arrangement regarding its use or even its true ownership. My grandfather, my mother's father, had been a shrewd but quiet man, and I remembered him once vaguely mentioning something about a long game with that plot. I stored that information away, a curious anomaly, never imagining its future significance. Then came Serena Vance. She swept into Richard's life like a perfectly coiffed hurricane. Glamorous, outwardly charming, and with two impeccably behaved children from a previous marriage, she was everything Richard publicly coveted. She fit his image of a new family, polished, aspirational, and seemingly effortless. Their courtship was swift, their engagement even faster. I met Serena a few times. She was polite, but had an unsettling way of looking at me, as if assessing my worth to Richard and finding it wanting. She quickly filled the void that had always existed in Richard's family life, presenting him with a ready-made, picture-perfect unit, exactly what he seemed to crave for his social media presence and public image. Richard, basking in her reflected glow, seemed to finally have the life he'd always advertised. He was so consumed by this new facade that he remained utterly oblivious to the quiet, dormant truth I held about his most prized possession, the land his gleaming dealership stood upon, and the subtle, forgotten legal entanglement that threatened its very foundation. The phone call from my father, Rick, came 2 weeks before the wedding. His voice was clipped, businesslike. "Chloe," he said, without preamble, "I'm calling about the wedding. Serena and I decided to keep it small. Very intimate. Just close family." My heart sank, a familiar dull ache blooming in my chest. Close family. I was his only child, his biological daughter. But I knew what small and intimate meant in Rick's lexicon, exclusive. And I wasn't on the list. "Ah, I understand, Dad," I replied, my voice perfectly level, a polite mask I'd worn for years. "Congratulations, of course." He mumbled a quick thank you, then swiftly changed the subject to business, reinforcing his priorities. I hung up, a bitter taste in my mouth, but pushed it down. This was just Rick being Rick. The real blow came a few days later. I was casually scrolling through my Facebook feed, trying to distract myself from the lingering sting of his exclusion, when a flurry of wedding photos popped up. Professional, high-resolution shots. Rick, beaming, looking younger than I'd seen him in years, arm in arm with a radiant Serena. They were surrounded by family, but not my family. Her family. And prominently featured were her 2 children, a boy and a girl, laughing, posing with a comfortable intimacy that tore at me. Rick had his arm around Serena's son, a proud, paternal smile on his face. The caption below the album read, "My new family. So blessed to start this new chapter." The words hit me like a physical blow. My new family. Not our new family, not even my family and Serena's children. It was an absolute erasure. I wasn't just excluded from the wedding, I was excluded from his very concept of family. He had replaced me. Completely. All those years of subtle neglect, of being an afterthought, of feeling like a burden, they converged in that moment. The polite smile I usually wore cracked. The long-suppressed hurt surged, burning hot, then crystallizing into something cold and hard. This wasn't just a snub. This was a deliberate, public declaration that I didn't matter. In that searing moment, watching him celebrate a life where I had no place, the last vestiges of my youthful longing for his affection died. And in its place, a fierce, chilling resolve was born. He thought he could write me out of his life, erase my existence. But he had no idea that his next move, this public display of a new family, had just pushed me to use the biggest secret I held about his business, a secret that could shatter his carefully constructed world and make him turn truly, irrevocably pale. While Rick and Serena embarked on a lavish honeymoon, publicly flaunting their new family across exotic locales on social media, I retreated into a quiet, meticulous world of my own. Their posts, filled with contrived smiles and picture-perfect moments with Serena's children, were a constant, painful reminder of my erasure. Yet, each perfectly curated image only fueled my resolve. They were basking in their newfound happiness, utterly oblivious to the storm I was brewing. I began by dusting off the old property documents and legal files I had inherited from my maternal grandfather years ago. He had been a man of quiet foresight, a shrewd, small-time investor who often made seemingly insignificant acquisitions that, years later, proved prescient. Among his papers was an obscure, long-dormant deed for a small, oddly shaped parcel of land. This parcel, it turned out, was not only adjacent to Rick's Hayes Auto Group but, due to an old, complex zoning agreement and a forgotten easement, It technically underpinned a critical portion of his most lucrative showroom floor. My grandfather had secured it decades ago, knowing its strategic value, but had never acted on it. Now, it was mine. I spent weeks consulting with top real estate lawyers, property rights experts, and zoning specialists, all under strict non-disclosure agreements. They confirmed my findings. The legal nuances of the old deed and the forgotten zoning arrangement meant that my small parcel carried disproportionate leverage. Rick, in his haste to expand and his focus on grand acquisitions, had overlooked this tiny, crucial detail, assuming his vast wealth and influence made him invulnerable. He believed he owned everything outright. He was wrong. My lawyers assured me that any attempt to challenge my rights, or worse, to force me to sell, would involve a costly, public legal battle that could halt his operations and expose significant regulatory oversights on his part. My secret weapon was legal, ironclad, and entirely silent. With my legal strategy solidified, I began to apply subtle, almost imperceptible pressure on Hayes Auto Group. My first move was anonymous. I engaged a small, reputable land surveyor to formally mark the exact boundaries of my small parcel, including the specific points where it encroached upon Rick's showroom. The surveyor's crew arrived without fanfare, did their work, and left. Rick's dealership manager, annoyed by the minor disruption, simply had the boundary markers removed, assuming it was a mistake or an overzealous neighbor. He didn't connect it to me. Next, I had my lawyers quietly send a formal inquiry to the city's zoning department, requesting clarification on the historical easement details related to that specific land parcel and its impact on commercial structures. This wasn't a lawsuit, it was a simple, bureaucratic query designed to raise a flag. The zoning department, obligated to investigate, initiated a minor review of Hayes Auto Group's property compliance. Rick's legal team received a generic letter about a routine review. They dismissed it as standard bureaucracy, unaware it was a carefully placed pebble designed to start an avalanche. Rick, meanwhile, was basking in his new life. Serena was throwing lavish parties, consolidating their social standing. He was expanding his dealership, oblivious to the quiet bureaucratic hum starting beneath his feet. However, the minor annoyances began to multiply. Construction on a new wing of the dealership faced unexpected delays due to new, permitting complexities. A key property deal stalled because of unresolved boundary issues. His lawyers, frustrated, reported these as minor, inexplicable hurdles. Rick, used to seamless operations, grew increasingly irritated. He suspected minor sabotage from a rival or just bad luck. He still had no idea his discarded daughter was meticulously weaving a net around his most prized possession. The minor annoyances escalated into a full-blown crisis for Rick. The city's zoning review, fueled by my continued, anonymous queries and the discovery of original, forgotten plans, flagged a significant compliance issue with his showroom structure on my land. They issued a formal notice of noncompliance, demanding immediate action and threatening heavy fines or even operational halts if not resolved. Simultaneously, a major, unexpected lawsuit was filed against Hayes Auto Group by a previously unknown entity, challenging the long-standing validity of Rick's use of the disputed parcel. The lawsuit was complex, citing obscure land laws and historical deeds, making it incredibly difficult for his legal team to untangle. Rick's carefully constructed world began to crack under the immense pressure. He was constantly on the phone with his lawyers, his face pale and drawn. His new, perfect life with Serena was dissolving into frantic damage control. His public appearances became strained, his smiles forced. Serena, unnerved by the escalating crisis, began to show signs of impatience, her glamorous facade fraying. The children, previously so happy, sensed the tension. I watched all of this unfold from a distance calmly. My lawyers confirmed that Rick's options were narrowing. He either had to negotiate directly with the owner of the disputed parcel, me, though he didn't know it, or face catastrophic legal and financial repercussions, potentially crippling his dealership and his reputation. The stage was set. I secured a meeting with Rick and his legal team, positioning myself as the representative of the entity holding the contested deed. He entered the meeting room, stressed and visibly aged, still oblivious. He saw me, Chloe, the daughter he had erased, and assumed I was merely a bystander, perhaps there as a character witness or a legal assistant for the mysterious true owner. He had no idea he was about to face the ultimate surprise. The owner he had so desperately sought to negotiate with was me. And my next move was about to make him turn truly, irrevocably pale. The meeting room felt sterile, cold, a stark contrast to the emotional inferno raging within me. Rick, accompanied by his high-powered legal team, sat across the polished conference table, his face drawn, eyes hollow with stress. He'd aged 10 years in the past month, his usual polished veneer replaced by a palpable desperation. He was there to negotiate with the owner of the disputed land parcel that threatened to cripple Hayes Auto Group. He believed he was meeting a faceless, shrewd investor. He still had no idea it was me. I sat opposite him, perfectly composed, my own legal counsel beside me. "Mr. Hayes," my lawyer began, his voice calm, "my client is prepared to discuss the terms of the land dispute. However, they insist on handling this matter personally." Rick nodded, his eyes starting to me, then away, clearly dismissing my presence. "Very well," he said, rubbing his temples. "Just tell me who I'm dealing with. This has cost me a fortune already." I met his gaze, a quiet, knowing smile playing on my lips. "You're dealing with me, Dad." Rick's head snapped up. His eyes, already wide with stress, dilated further. His face, already pale, drained of all remaining color. "Chloe," he whispered, disbelief twisting his features into a grotesque mask. What are you talking about?" I leaned forward, placing the original, legally ironclad deed and the updated corporate registration documents squarely on the table, sliding them towards him. "This land, Dad," I explained, my voice steady, devoid of emotion, "the very ground under your most profitable showroom. It's mine. It's been in our mother's family for generations, a quiet legacy that my grandfather protected. And now, through careful legal maneuvering, it's firmly, undeniably, under my control." His lawyers scrambled, frantically reviewing the documents, their faces mirroring Rick's disbelief, then dawning horror. They confirmed it. The old, obscure deed, the forgotten easement, the precise legal strategy, it was all legitimate. He had built his empire on quicksand, and I held the key to its collapse. All those mysterious zoning issues, Dad, the unexpected lawsuits. I continued, my voice gaining a quiet power. "That was me. You wanted to know why? You wanted to know why I suddenly had such immense leverage over your precious dealership." I paused, letting the silence hang heavy. "It's because you told me you were celebrating small, to exclude me from your wedding, only to flaunt Serena's children as your new family on Facebook. You erased me, Dad. After a lifetime of making me feel like an afterthought, you made it public. That was the last straw." Rick stood up abruptly, overturning his chair with a clatter. He choked, his face contorted with rage, fear, and utter humiliation. "You ungrateful little." "Ungrateful," I countered, standing to meet his gaze, my composure unshakable. "You left me for dead, Dad. Emotionally. You built your new, perfect life on the rubble of my feelings. And now that new family can watch your empire crumble, because I own the very ground it stands on." He swayed, clutching the edge of the table, his skin an ashen gray. Serena, who had joined him, gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, her glamorous facade dissolving into horror. My next move made him turn truly, irrevocably pale. I presented him with my final demand, a complete transfer of the remaining Hayes Auto Group assets, or face public financial ruin and devastating legal action that would expose his every past misstep. He had erased me from his life. Now I erased him from his empire. In the wake of that explosive meeting, Rick Hayes's meticulously constructed world crumbled with devastating speed. The news of his dealership's legal and financial collapse, coupled with the revelation of his estranged daughter's calculated takeover, became a sensational story. The media, initially fascinated by his new family, now reveled in the dramatic downfall of this seemingly perfect patriarch. Hayes Auto Group, once a symbol of his success, became a testament to his hubris and neglect. Faced with insurmountable legal battles and public disgrace, Rick was forced to liquidate his remaining assets, losing not only his beloved dealership but also much of his personal fortune. Serena, unable to tolerate the public scandal and the financial ruin, swiftly divorced him, taking her children and leaving him utterly alone, just as he had left me years ago. His new family abandoned him when the facade shattered. As for me, Chloe Miller, the acquisition of Hayes Auto Group was more than just a revenge plot. It was a reclamation. I didn't keep the luxury car dealership. Instead, using my expertise in finance and my newly expanded network, I systematically dismantled its operations, selling off assets to cover debts and investing the remaining capital into ethical, sustainable ventures. The revenue generated from the sale of the land, once a forgotten deed, provided the capital for a new chapter in my life. I founded a successful consulting firm specializing in asset recovery and corporate ethics, using my unique skills to help others avoid the very pitfalls that had consumed my father. My life, once defined by the shadow of my father's neglect, was now characterized by independence, purpose, and genuine connection. I learned that true family isn't about blood ties or public appearances, but about mutual respect, love, and unwavering support. Rick had taught me, in the cruelest way possible, that validation comes not from a parent's fleeting affection, but from self-worth and the courage to fight for what is right. The pain of his betrayal had transformed into the strength that rebuilt my life and, in doing so, inadvertently built my own empire, far more meaningful than his ever was. He had expected me to disappear quietly. He expected me to be nothing. He expected me to be easily erased. He didn't know that the daughter he discarded was the very person who would expose his lies and make him face the true cost of his emotional bankruptcy.